So, welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight. I'm Judith Kova, and today I have a new guest. Dylan Charles is here. He is the editor of wakingtimes.com, and he is also a coach for self-sabotage. And his website is dylancharlescoaching.com. So, Dylan, welcome. Yeah, I was going to say welcome back, but that is not true.
Perhaps I've been here before. Who knows?
Deja vu.
I'm sure we've lived many, many lifetimes already. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Judith. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Okay. So that's always my first question. How did you go down that road that these days you are the editor of Waking Times? You are doing self-sabotage seminars, coaching for other people. I mean, that is not something like a banker, engineer, something like that. So how did that happen?
It's funny because sometimes I reflect on this, and people who have the courage to do what they want to do in life and follow their own path, despite the difficulties, despite the challenges, despite the even in the day that we live in today, with the censorship, just, having these tech platforms and stuff limit our ability to communicate with the people that want to hear from us. But people who accept these challenges and walk that path in life, I always admire them, and I appreciate them because, there's bankers and engineers, they've been around, but we need trailblazers, people who are willing to accept the call of adventure and willing to show other people that it's possible to live in ways that honor the spirits and as we walk this world. So that's an interesting question. Although sometimes I wonder, it's would that path be easier? Would those paths be easier? I mean, the world that we live in today, Judith, is very, they have it's a production facility. They produce good employees, good cogs in the machine. And so they've got some very well grooved paths that people can take. And for a lot of people, there's payoffs in those paths. There's, financial stability. There's esteem from peers. There's the recognition by academia, even the recognition from the silly cancel culture and whatnot that we have here. If you're walking the straight and narrow path, and people tend to, that's available to you. Let me just say it like that. And so a long time ago, I realized that I didn't really fit in any of those grooves. And so I'm about to be 46. So I think that's important to say. I have about close to 20 years on what I would call my journey of self-mastery, my journey of really overcoming myself and learning to who I am and what I'm all about in life. And so for me, this particular journey here, the journey that led me to start Waking Times, the journey that has really steered me in the direction of being a valuable service to people as a self-mastery and self-sabotage coach, which is work that I absolutely love. Oh my God, it's so inspiring. I love being part of people's journeys and their stories. But all of that really began in about 2004, and what I would call the dark night of the soul for me, the moment when I hit rock bottom. And so many of the great people that I know and love most have been through similar situations. In fact, I have a podcast called Battered Souls. It's at batteredsouls.com, but it's really about this. It's about the things that carry us down to rock bottom. And it's about those amazing people who somehow muster the energy and the courage to pull themselves out of it, take full responsibility, and then really transform and transmute that energy into something useful for the world and something of value to others. So it's a very archetypal story. If you look at, when I look back, I sort of consider that I've had two lives. There was the life of self-destruction, and then there was the life of self-discovery, right? And so, like I said, in 2004, I hit rock bottom. What that was for me, Judith, it was the culmination of having a somewhat traumatic childhood and not having any guidance, not having any leadership or any understanding of the impact that had on me. And so really as a child, I had to take it upon myself to find my way in terms of coping mechanisms, right? So I don't claim to have any super great trauma. I know many people who've been through a whole hell of a lot worse. But in my case, it was, a divorce when I was very young in the family. So there was that chaos. There's anger. There's the resentment, the bitterness of the family, and just having my mom raise both my older brother and I. And my older brother was very abusive to me. So that really ingrained within me these patterns of not feeling safe and of really not knowing, really just almost like PTSD patterns within my nervous system from a very early age. And so by the time I was about 14 years old, I started drinking alcohol to soothe that. I didn't know it at the time. That's what I was doing. And when I look back, very much clear, I was looking for something to just calm my nerves, something just to give me some peace in the chaos that I lived in. You know, because I would never know if I came home, if my brother was in a bad mood, my older brother was in a bad mood, then you know, he might just start wailing on me and beating on me. So I learned from an early age to fight back. But you know, he put me in stitches a couple of times as a kid. And these are things that if somebody else did, they might be arrested or go to jail. But if it's your own family, your own brother, you don't have them arrested. You don't prosecute them in any way. And in fact, you tend to develops that those trauma bonds with people. So you tend to be more forgiving of them. You tend to learn how to endure pain. You tend to keep that to yourself. You tend to maintain peace in the relationship by sacrificing parts of yourself, by not allowing yourself the full expression of what you deserve to be. And that was in my own house. And I know a lot of people, especially a lot of my clients, have experienced similar situations. And so it's worth acknowledging that the circumstances we're in really tend to lay patterns and programs within the subconscious mind. And so as I grew up, I really already had embedded within me some very strong tendencies towards the suppression of things that were important to me, the suppression of my self-expression. And I did that, like I said, at 14, started drinking alcohol. By 15 years old, I was 15 years old. I was blackout drinking alcohol. I was really good at stealing liquor from the cabinet. I wasn't old enough to buy beer or anything, but there was a liquor cabinet. So took full advantage of that. Made it through high school, had some very traumatic experiences in high school, just being that, just having that insecurity with yourself. Right. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think it's really important to relate this message to people, because I know so many of the battered souls out there have been through this, but like living in those circumstances, those uncertain circumstances where you're in a household with passive aggressive anger, where you're in a household with drama, where you're in a household where the adult person is doing the best that they can, but they may be drinking, they may be losing themselves as well. So when you're in these situations, you tend to medicate, which is what I did. And so throughout my high school years, you also tend to have a sense of that you're different, that you don't belong, that something's different about you. So it's really difficult to relate to all the popular kids at school. It's really different to be it's really difficult to be one of the jocks or one of the straight A students or whatever. And although I did very well in school, I was always kind of a black sheep at school. And I wasn't really a troublemaker, but I didn't really fit in. And I think that's really the key point, is I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And so in high school, I had some rough experiences, got involved with some wrong crowds, had some people that I know were murdered during my high school years. And so had those traumas as well. And so when I turned 18, 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I moved out into the world, had my own place. 2 weeks after high school, I was living in my own apartment with my own job, my own car, living my own life, paying my own bills. And I had the world at my fingertips, but I didn't understand who I was. I didn't understand what I was capable of. I didn't understand that it was possible to seek a greater purpose in your life above and beyond what's already in front of you, above and beyond what's in your city, what's in your town, what your friends are doing, what the guys at the factory down the street are doing. And so I grew up in a town called Austin, Texas. I know you're in Germany. Anybody listening to this probably heard of Austin. It's a pretty well-known place. But it's a party town. So there's a lot of drinking. There's a lot of alcohol. There's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of that energy of hedonism, that energy of debauchery, self-destruction. And so as soon as I graduated from high school, I jumped all in that. And I started doing drugs. I did find kind of a scene that I belonged to in the electronic music, the raving scene. And of course, there's a lot of drugs in that culture. And so in a very short time, that culture really just consumed me. And so I was doing ecstasy all the time, acid, mushrooms, but not in a ceremonial or a sacred way. I was doing them recreationally. So mixing them with other drugs, pills, alcohol, whatever. And so I didn't really understand that they had the potential for the quality for spiritual awakening as well. And so I was misusing and abusing those substances. And by the time I was 19, I had started doing crystal methamphetamines, which is very, very dangerous. It's a very nasty drug. And I spent probably a good solid 2 to 3 years as a very serious addict of that, and then was able to get myself off of that stuff over a period of a few years. So When I was 19, I met a woman that I fell in love with. We got married when I was 21, and we're still married today. We're about to celebrate our 25th anniversary. So I want to point that out because she really was my lifeline. We had each other. And so throughout everything that I've been through, I've been able to develop and build this relationship. And so I'm very, very grateful, and I'm very gifted to have that kind of a lasting, just a really meaningful love in my life. So that's a big part of my journey. In 2004, I really was hitting rock bottom. I really hit rock bottom in 2004. And so what that looked like for me, Judith, was I basically had really learned how to isolate myself really well. I learned how to hide my addictions from people, even my wife, really well. And so I was going through a very heavy alcoholic state. I was, working to come off of the serious drug of crystal methamphetamine. So as an exchange for that, and this is very common in self-sabotage, people give up one thing and immediately replace it with something else. So to me, in my mind, in those days, it would be better to do cocaine than crystal methamphetamine. So you go from crystal to coke, whatever. And all along the way, there's all the pills. There's the Xanax, the Valiums, the party pills, the Oxycontins, the Vicodins, and all of these things that are just tossed around in our society. All of these poisons, these toxic poisons that are just right there, ready for us to self-destruct on. And so, I want to speak to the men here. I want to say this. I was addicted to pornography as well for a couple of years. And the deterioration that caused within my soul was very severe. And I know it's difficult for men to speak about that. And so I always like to acknowledge that. I always like to let men know that there's a lot of men who are suffering from this. There is a different way to live, and it's really important for men to understand that living outside of that trap, living outside of that black hole, that fantasy world is really a joyful, amazing place to be. And so I would encourage any men that are out there listening to this that may be suffering from the same, maybe in the same situation, to reach out to me. I love talking with men about this thing. It's a very personal issue, but at the same time, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the statistics on it, it is epidemic. I mean, it is so widespread. I mean, pornography sites are the top visited websites in the world. So it's something that a lot of people are going through. And so when I finally realized that my health was suffering and I was just really not able to cope with my daily life. And so I started to have suicidal ideations. What's the point of being here? I'll never be off drugs. I'm hiding from myself. I'm all alone. I'm isolated in a town with a lifetime of friends. I have a woman that loves me in my own house, and I'm isolating myself. And so I finally reached out to help, and I went to my, I kind of owned up to some things with some members of my family, and I went to the doctor to seek some help, and my family physician immediately.
Big mistake, probably.
You know as well as I do, what seems like a mistake at the time. It's like when you look back, these are all the moments, these are the linchpin moments in your life when things that might be or seem unfavorable really turn out to be those moments that give you the greatest opportunity for expansion, for growth. So it's impossible for me to look back on any of these experiences, Judith, and feel anything but gratitude for them, because I like the man who I am today. I love the man who I am today. And I wouldn't be that man without every single thing that I've been through. And I don't think my journey is very unique. I think there's so many similarities to so many people that I know. It's a very common story. It's almost archetypal in a way, right? And so, I did go to the doctor. He prescribed me antidepressants immediately, and I immediately had a strong reaction to those, right? What do you call that? Adverse reaction or a side effect. Side effect is the word. It's a side effect. It's an effect. It comes on the side. It's no big deal, man. It's like a side of fries, right? Everybody likes that. And so I called my doctor that day, and I was like, "Yo, doc, like these things are really, really messing with my body, and I'll spare you the details." But his response was, "Oh, you'll get used to the side effects." Big red flag. Big red flag. He basically was like, "Look, I don't have time to talk. Whatever, dude. You're gonna get used to the side effects. Don't quit on the pills." Big red flag. Like, I'm like, you would get used to this? Like, can people actually live this way? And so one of the things that he did for me in that first visit was he gave me antidepressants and Xanax right off the bat, because he wanted me to have some sense of relief. And Xanax is it's a drug that's it's really good for anxiety. I mean, for whatever it's worth, if you are having a panic attack or anxiety attack, it's really effective at bringing you down. So as a party person, I was like, "Yeah, Xanax, give me more Xanax." And so, but he wanted to send me to a specialist. He wanted to send me to a proper psychiatrist. And so he referred me to one of the top psychiatrists in Austin, Texas at the time. I won't say his name. I don't even believe he's alive anymore. But if anybody were to ask me, I could tell you exactly who it was, because I have had people question the truth of the story, because it is so far, it's so mind blowing what happens at the psychiatrist's office that I've literally had people be like, "Yeah, man, you made this up. You're a fiction writer." Like, man, truth is stranger than fiction, Judith. You probably know that. Some of the stuff that's going on in the world you can't write, and most of the stuff that happens in people's day-to-day lives you can't make up. So I would go to the psychiatrist a week later. I hadn't taken any more of the antidepressants. I sit in his office. I meet. Yeah, it's important to note as well that as I showed up on time for my appointment, I sat there and waited an extra 30, 45 minutes beyond the time that I was supposed to see the doctor. And it wasn't because he was with patients. It was because the whole time I was there were pharmaceutical representatives with these. They have those big square suit. They're like double-sized briefcases.
Yeah.
They're walking in and out of the office, and they're on a first name basis with the receptionist. As soon as she sees them come in the door, she buzzes them to the back. They go back. You hear joking, laughter. Like they're on a very, they have a very close connection to the people working in these offices. And it's like that in every doctor's office, in every psychiatrist's office. And so I was watching this going on, and I had a weird feeling about that. I was like, these people have priority over the patients. These people, yeah, they have VIP status over the patients. And I was here scheduled to be here 45 minutes ago. They're treating me like dirt. Literally, I'm like, "Hey, when mine's my appointment?" And they're like, "Just sit back down, sir. We'll call you when we're ready." But it's an open door for the drug pushers, and I'm not afraid to call them that. So when I finally go to my meeting, I meet this very distinguished older gentleman, right? And we get to talking, and within the first few minutes, I realized that this isn't somebody that I resonate with. This isn't somebody that I connect with. This isn't somebody that I want to share my darkest secrets with, right? And so I close up and I get a little standoffish, and he does every attempt. He makes every attempt to try to pry me open and get, he's like, "Come on, son, we got an hour. Let's, what's going on? Let me help you. I want to help you. That, like, you're going to have to tell me what's going on." And so I flipped the script on him, and I was like, "Okay, cool. Well, I just want to let you know I'm a little apprehensive. And so this might take me a while to get comfortable in this environment with you. And so I would like to know some things about you as well." And so one of the questions I asked him first off was, excuse me, I said, "Sir, how much money do you make?" He looked at me with this, yeah, right. Yeah. Legitimate
Okay.
question, right? How much money do you make? And he looked at me with a very wide-eyed sense of pride. It was very, I'll never forget. He goes, "I make $450,000 a year. I've got a Mercedes SL, whatever. I've got a Cessna 150, whatever. I've got houses in Westlake Hills, Austin, Durango, Colorado, and Chiapas, Mexico." Just proud of himself, just happy as a clam. Just really, really honored that somebody asked him that question. It's like he'd been waiting to answer it. So I'm in a situation with somebody who lives in a different world than me. They're not going to understand me. Okay. So we're getting close to the time that the appointment's supposed to be over. And I look on his wall, and there's a whole wall full of Air Force memorabilia. So if you've seen somebody that's been in, they have pictures of in their younger days, when they're in uniform and they're standing next to the heavy equipment of war, and they're on the runway and they're in a plane and all this kind of stuff. And they've got the little models of plane, all the plaques and all this, whatever. Not the world I'm from. And so I asked him, I said, "Sir, it looks like you're in the military. Did you serve in any of the wars?" And he was like, "Yes, sir. I served in Vietnam." I was like, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, what did you do? What was your job? What was your role in Vietnam?" And he said, "I was a fighter bomber pilot." I was like, "Oh, fighter bomber." So I had this really, really just surreal moment where I sat there in this icy cold with this very distinguished, very well-respected, very wealthy psychiatrist, leading psychiatrist. He was like the leader of the local psychiatry board and stuff. I looked him right in the eye, like dead square in the eye, and I had this Colonel Kurtz moment. Colonel Kurtz is the antagonist from Apocalypse Now, right? The old Stanley Kubrick movie. And so I asked this guy straight up. I said, "Fighter bomber pilot. Wow, that's interesting. How many people have you killed?"
Yeah.
And he looked me dead square in the eye. Didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't shift uncomfortably, didn't scratch his nose to try to hide that he was lying or anything. He said, "Thousands. And that was that. I realized I was in the room with a mass murderer. And however you want to politicize that, someone who kills thousands and thousands of people is a mass murderer in my book, especially when you put it in the context of the imperial war system, the military industrial complex that we have. And that's something that I've talked about in great detail at my website, Waking Times. But my perspective is a murder is a murder. And so I felt this immediate sense of, oh boy, this is a challenge right here. And we had just a few minutes left of the appointment. And he's like, all right, well, we're going to have to see each other again, but I don't know if I can really help you out, but I can tell you this. I'm like, what's that, doc? You've got a chemical imbalance. Okay, cool. I got a chemical imbalance, right? So
do you have a lab
imbalance,
test
right?
for that?
Is it like, right? Is it chemical imbalance? Okay, I got a chemical imbalance. What exactly does that mean, doc? Oh, well, it means that your brain is different than normal people's brains. Okay. Did I always have the chemical imbalance? Probably so. Well, I always have the chemical imbalance. Yes, it is a thing that you have. And the only thing that can shift the balance of these chemicals are pills. Okay. So he says, yeah, well, let me write you out some scripts. And he writes me on a script. I'm not joking. Again, this is real. This really happened. And I talk to so many people about experiences like this, and I want to highlight it on your show because people go through this all the time, and most people don't catch it for what it is. Most people don't see it as a trap, right? They see it as a help from an authority, right? So he writes me out a script for 7 different medications a day. I was 26 years old. And I say to him, I was like, okay, cool. Well, how long am I going to be needing to take this stuff? And his reply was along the lines of, well, this one you'll only take for the next week as you get off this and that. This one here, we're going to up our dosage of that. We're going to split the dosage of this. We're going to wean up this. And once we get to the right dosage of that, whatever, then you'll probably need these, and these you'll take forever. And the whole prospect of it was so insane, just absolutely so totally insane that it just didn't make any sense to me. Like, it struck me as very odd. It just felt foreign to me. It didn't resonate, register, seem like a good idea in me at any way. So I was like, okay. He pulls out of his desk sample pills, free sample pills from the pharma guys, gives me a plastic bag full of pills. And so I walk out of his office with a jingly bag of like a bag of candy or something, and it's making this jingly sound as I leave the office. And I walk out into the parking lot, and I'm like, yo, man, I really need help in my life. And I'm thinking to myself, I really need help. And like, this is who I thought I could turn to, but this seems more insane. This seems worse than where I was. They just want me to be a different kind of drug addict. And I had this moment, this very important spiritual awakening moment, I would call it, where something spoke to me. Something was like, Dylan, you don't need this stuff. You can do this on your own. And so right then and there, I threw the bag of pills in the trash. I got in my car, I drove off, and totally committed at that point to heal myself. Absolutely committed to heal myself. And it wasn't so much that I was committed to awaken some sleeping giant or some warrior energy with me and overcome this victim shadow or anything like that. It literally was just like, I have no other choices. I've been to the best psychiatrist in town, and he wants me to be on drugs for the rest of my life. I came here to get off drugs. And so something interesting happens, Judith, and I like talking about this with my clients. It's a very important moment in people's lives. Something really, really big happens when people shift into a consciousness of commitment, right? Mm-hmm. That is when they set their intention to something and they fully commit to the outcome. Now, in order to fully commit to the outcome, you don't need to know the hows. You don't need to know the whens. You don't need to know the whats or the wheres. You don't need to know how to do that. It's a communication. It's a process of collaboration with the universe. When you commit, when you awaken to the consciousness of commitment, you enter into a conversation with the universe. I firmly believe this. And so, you've seen those quotes. You've probably seen those quotes. Take the leap and you will be supported, or, jump and, take the leap and you will be supported. I forgot the direct quotes, but there's some really, really, just simply profound quotes about that. If you jump, you will be supported, right? Don't be afraid, right? Go ahead and commit. So rather than be like that kid at the top of the slide, not wanting to go down the slide, or the person at the top of a cliff while everybody else is jumping off the cliff into the water, not wanting to do that. That moment when your foot steps over the edge or you push over the slide, there's the commitment. There's no turning back. And so when you bring that energy into your life, and this is something that I really enjoy helping people to awaken within themselves during their lives, because people are going through some very challenging situations that have them stuck in a lot of ways. But to awaken that energy, when you do so, so many good things fall into your life. right? The path is revealed to you. So in my case, within a week, one of my coworkers, I noticed that he had been walking by my office with these big, long Chinese swords and nunchucks and staffs and short sticks and all kind of different like kung fu weapons. And I was like, what is that about? And he was like, it's kung fu. I was like, you could do kung fu. This is America. Like, you can do that stuff. And he was like, yeah, man, the school is right down the street. Why don't you come do a class with me this week? So within a week of leaving the psychiatrist's office, I went to a kung fu school. And my first class, I was like, this is it. I knew, like, my heart told me that this is the path, right? This is the path to survival. It was the path to health. It was the path to recovery. It was the path to finding myself. And so I fully committed to kung fu. And within 3 weeks of training 3 to 5 times a week, because I went right into it. I was out of shape, but I went right into it and got myself into shape, lickety split. And within 3 weeks, I mean, I've got journals that go back to this time in my life. And within 3 weeks, I was, the anxiety was almost gone. The depression seemed to be non-existent. I was excited. I was inspired, right? I had something to look forward to every day. I could train any day of the week that I wanted to. I bought a membership. I was around people who wanted to see me grow, people who wanted to see me healthy, people that wanted me to be strong, and so much of self-sabotage is about overcoming the things that make you weak. And so as a self-sabotage coach, a person like me looks at self-sabotage from a little bit of a different angle than your therapist or your psychotherapist or your new age healer or your counselor, right? And I know you've had Jason Christoff on your show, and Jason's a friend of mine, and he's a very excellent mentor to me as well. And so we tend to look at self-sabotage from the perspective of the influences acting against your subconscious mind. So we look at it as a tribal thing. We look at it as a natural safety-seeking response to the world, where you're just looking to see what everybody else is doing. And your subconscious mind wants you to blend in with everybody else. And so that's really what was happening. I was just really blending in with everybody else. And so when I went into the Kung Fu dojo, I changed my tribe. So whereas I had been spending time with a sick, dysfunctional tribe, there was always drama and chaos in their relationships and their friendship dynamics. There was always drugs involved. People weren't making healthy decisions. People weren't eating well. People weren't getting the rest that they needed. They were partying all the time. And I have many friends from that era 25 years ago who haven't survived this long. There is what do they say? It's a the candle that burns twice as bright, it burns twice as fast. Or
party
something like
is over.
Yeah, so the party's over. So in a sense, like switching tribes, right? Or even tricking your subconscious mind, training your subconscious mind, but making your subconscious mind believe that you're part of a healthy, a wealthy, and abundant tribe can even be can even be a survival, can even amount to an act of survival for you. It can be what keeps you alive, because the subconscious mind doesn't really care if you destroy yourself. It cares if you fit in. And so this really is the main reason why I work with self-sabotage these days, because when I look back, it all makes perfect sense to me. Like, I really understand that I was surrounded and I was embedded with programs, and I ran along to do what everybody else was doing, and it almost killed me. It almost destroyed me. So I went to Kung Fu and I studied Kung Fu. Ended up, before I left the United States in 2009, ended up getting a black belt in that particular Kung Fu school. But along the way, these synchronicities began to unfold in my life. And so again, that's that collaboration, that's that cooperation, that's that feedback from the universe that's telling you, hey, you're on the right path. You're committed. Or you have a level of consciousness that allows the universe to step in and help you without you standing in the way, without you fudging it up, without you ignoring it, pushing it back, suppressing it. And so, like, the amazing things happen. I mean, these are synchronicities, big and small, Judith. A synchronicity can be as simple as going to the library, right? And as you're walking by a table, there's a book that's sitting on the table that wasn't in the shelf, right? That you may not have picked out. You wouldn't have looked in the card catalog for it, right? But it happens to be a book that when you open it up, it speaks directly to you and it changes your life. And books have, as you know, books have the power to change your life. And so it showed up in those ways. It showed up first in a lot of books and literature. And in the Kung Fu school, it was even things, it was really far out, more new agey stuff. And I'm a very grounded person. My astrology is, I'm a Taurus. So I've learned over the years to really lean into and respect the fact that I'm a Taurus and I need to stay grounded. But at the time, a lot of the literature that I was seeing was very new age stuff like Drunvalo, Melchizedek, a lot of the Carl Jung, and Carl Jung I consider very grounded as well, grounded. But So a lot of these really, really interesting far out perspectives about what's possible for the human spirit. What are the limits to human, what is the broader range of human perception, and what are the limits to the human experience if there are any? And so when you begin to look at this kind of information, and there's a lot of this at Waking Times, this is one of the reasons why I was inspired to start Waking Times a number of years later. But if you look at a lot of this information, what it does is it really inspires you to consider that there is a perspective much bigger and broader that contains much more possibility and potential for your life than what has been crafted around you. And of course, we love the matrix. We love the matrix analogy, right? It's the idea that a reality has been carefully designed and selected for you. It's designed to captivate all of your senses. It's designed to keep you enthralled in every way possible. So even in the movie The Matrix, there's the guy Cypher that is one of the good guys, but he wants to eat that steak in the Matrix. He's tired of eating the food that they eat on the Nebuchadnezzar, right? So he makes a conscious decision to be part of the Matrix. And so most people these days, they don't make a conscious decision to do so. It's designed in a way that pulls you in so that you automatically just choose the tantalizing, sensational experiences and opportunities that are right in front of your face. Now, whether that's participating in the stories, the narratives of mainstream media, or in the very conventional types of roles that people can find in this economy, but there's ways for you to spend your whole life. It's been constructed in a way that you can easily spend your whole life in a system of enclosed perception that never gives you the opportunity to know what life really is about, that gives you the opportunity to really have the personal experience that there's a sacredness to this life, that life itself is a gift, that life itself it can be full of love, it can be full of inspiration, it can be full of joy, it can be full of peace, right? So these are things that are just beyond the veil of the matrix. And so in my journey, the synchronicities seemed to really start to point me. They were the finger pointing at the moon. They were telling me and alerting me that there's something else bigger and better going on behind the curtain, behind that curtain of the Wizard of Oz, if you will. And so that really set my journey in motion. I began studying Tai Chi as a complement to Kung Fu. And so that really helped me to calm my mind down. It took me a good 6 months of practicing Tai Chi several times a week before my mind slowed down enough to be able to just grasp the gentle nature and the purpose of the practice. And when that happened, a lot of things changed for me because I really started to enter more coherent states of mind more frequently. So in a real world, just a display of that, I just basically was operating with more peace and confidence in my life. So then I found Chi.
Sorry,
go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, one question quickly. Do you know where your moon is in your birth chart?
I've looked that up before. I don't recall. Where is my moon? I would have to look it up again. The truth is, I've looked it up so many times. And I've written it down so many times, and I've had so many people advise me on it. And it's one of those things that keeps like escaping my memory. So what I take from that, Judith, is that I'm grounded, right? Like it's one thing I really love to share with my clients is stay grounded, right? Get this information. If it's for you, it'll stick with you. If it's useful to you, it'll stick with you. And so, in this process of unfolding and these synchronicities, I started to, I found a book by a Qigong master named Mantak Chia, right? And so it was all about awakening the healing energy of the Tao. And so that was my first exposure to the idea that the body had energy systems within it, that energy flowed through the body, that this energy was called Qi, and that you could strengthen this Qi in your life and in your body by doing very predictable practices. Or you could strengthen it in predictable ways by doing practices that have been around for many, many generations, perhaps even thousands of years. And so I started practicing from this book. And within a very short time, I started having these very mystical Qi experiences to where I would experience the energy flowing through my body and I would feel it along these pathways. And then out of meditation, I would look at the book and I would see diagrams of the human body and it would show these lines going through the body. And I'd be like, oh, that's exactly where I felt this. It's going exactly in the direction that the book says it's going, right? And so that really, really also began to help me to understand that there's a lot more potential in my body, right? There's this, the body itself has the potential to awaken to a greater possibility. And I think really the best way to really say that would be that we always have this potential. It's always with us. It's innate. It's innate with us when we're born. But given the environment that we're in, the fishbowl that we live in, it's full of toxicity. It's full of foods that don't serve us nutritionally well. It's full of toxic ideas, toxic emotions. All of these things really put the body under stress. They really put they inflame the body. They cause stress within the body, which blocks off our access to these greater, higher potentials. So I started experiencing these, and that was a huge wake-up call for me. And that really gave me the courage to leave my hometown of Austin, Texas for 32 years. So my wife and I left. We lived in Washington State for a little bit, and then made the big decision, the bold decision, to move to Costa Rica. And so in 2009, my wife, our 2 kids, and 5 duffel bags moved to Costa Rica. We were going to stay there for a year, and we ended up staying there for 7 years. So on this path, right after I got to Costa Rica, I received a random email from somebody telling me about a substance called ayahuasca. Never heard of it before. Yeah, never heard of it before. Have you ever drank ayahuasca?
No, but yeah, you go ahead.
You've heard about it. Yeah, it's interesting. I love talking with people about this. And so it very much was like, hey, here's the next door opening up that you're supposed to walk through. And so it very much called me in. Like I said, I didn't really have any frame of reference for it. And when I ultimately decided to go at the very beginning of 2011 to a retreat center with a man who's now become my very good friend and teacher, I had the opportunity of journeying with 2 elder shamans from a tribe called the Sequoia. So they're very well known. It's a very non-syncretic, very pure Amazonian tradition of yahe drinking, the exceptionally powerful medicine tradition. And I spent a few years drinking with the Sequoia, really like uncovering like the personal processing, like really like trying to understand who I was, really trying to get all the darkness of the past out of my mind and body. And so I went through very, very difficult physical and spiritual detoxing and purging the first few years of this medicine. And so I could even feel like there were several experiences where I could feel the effects of the crystal meth in my bones. I could feel like the remnants of these toxic chemicals deeply embedded within the cells of my body that had to be pushed out through the power of this medicine. And so from 2011 to the current day, that medicine has been a very big part of my life. And I've served as a retreat facilitator, very, very deeply involved in the Sequoia tradition. And I've had the opportunity to assist like a lot of people on their journeys through the sacred medicine. And in 2012, I was called in a different way to experience the shamanic medicine in Boga. So that is an African shamanic plant medicine from Western Equatorial Africa. Many people who've heard of ayahuasca have not heard of Iboga. Iboga itself is very, very, it's very different. It's a very masculine feeling experience. It's very grounded. It's very much teaches you how, it very much shows you how your life is governed by belief systems. It shows you which belief systems serve you well and which ones are hindrances to your progress and your happiness. And so it really is about studying life. And they call Iboga the greatest hunter for the truth. And so over the last 10 years, I've had lots of experiences with both of these medicines, and I've had the great honor to work in service as a facilitator, somebody who helps others through these experiences. And so they mean a lot to me. So they really have shaped my perspective. So Waking Times was started in 2012, and it was really started as a way to bridge to cross the bridge between the conspiracy information and the awakening information. So in 2003 or so is when I started to wake up politically, and that's when I really started to question some world events. And so I got involved in politics in 2008. It was part of the Ron Paul experience. I became a precinct delegate in Austin, Texas, and went to conventions, all that stuff, and quickly figured out that it wasn't my place. That wasn't where I belong. That wasn't where if it's for you, it's for you, but it's a den of thieves and liars, and it's not who I want to associate with. But hats off to all the good people who are in there, if there are any good people, but hats off to all the good people who are in there and are able to stomach that environment. It wasn't for me. And so we left the country, spent many, many years in the jungle, really purifying myself and really learning to love myself. And so I guess that's like the longest possible answer I could give to your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. But you
right
touched on something where I have to say that I find that very important. And that is the question, who would I be without my story?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of stories that we are telling ourselves and that have been with us for decades,
Yeah.
sometimes even since childhood. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say you grow up in a family where there's always scarcity, there's always no money,
Mm-hmm.
there's always, you know, something going on with that. There's a good chance that you will take that on and you will experience the same nonsense with
Right.
finances
Mm-hmm.
as you experienced during your childhood, if it's never addressed and healed. Yeah. And the same thing is, yeah, I'm always the one who falls for the alcoholic. I'm always the one. I'm sitting in the stadium, 10,000 people there. I'm the one who gets the ball in the face. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
hilarious.
and those stories, yeah, they almost develop a life of their own.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not surprising that they tend to manifest if we run around with them for too long. Yeah. So it's always good to have a hard, long look at what's funny stories am I telling myself?
Yeah. I mean, so much of the self-sabotage coaching is about that. It's like, what are the stories that you grew up with? It's
Mm.
how are those stories? Are you still living by those stories? We call them holdovers, these holdover events, these holdover patterns in your life. And so you're absolutely right. They tend to affect you throughout the entire course of the life and of your life until you catch them.
Yeah, exactly. Just out of curiosity, have you noticed an uptick in demand for coaching the last 2 years?
I've personally only shifted into coaching over the last year or so. And so for
Oh,
me,
okay.
everything's an uptick. Yeah. So I spent 2012 is when I started. 2011 is when I started Waking Times. And so it really is actually an important aspect of my self-sabotaging journey, because so many people do the same thing. But the way that I operated Waking Times for many, many years is I hid behind the scenes. I
Mm.
played small, right? I didn't allow myself the opportunity to network with people. I didn't accept opportunities when they came to me. I didn't pursue other opportunities. I had a very limited perception of what I was capable of, what I was possible in that. And so I lived in that environment. I lived my life in a certain way that's so, it's very similar to so many people that I help work with. So for the last, since 2015, 16, really in 2016 is really when I started to be inspired to do coaching. I'd spent a lot of time helping people with their journey through plant medicines. And I knew that, face to face and one on one, if I'm dealing with somebody, I have a lot to offer them. I have a lot of value to share with them. I have a lot of, my vast and past life experiences are very useful to people in helping them to gain clarity and insight on what they're going through. So it gives them a better view of what the next steps could be on their path. So a lot of people tend to have a very rigid perception of what's possible for them. They have a very rigid perception of what options they have in any moment, day-to-day moment in their life, whether they be career, relationships, health, even. And so in my self-sabotage is one of the things that I did was I played small. I played behind the scenes. I didn't allow myself to be myself.
Mm.
And so that's one of the reasons why I really, really turned to self-sabotage coaching, is because it makes perfect sense to me, as I said earlier, because these are habits, these are patterns that I picked up when I was young. I was very much in a situation where it served me well to play small. It served me well to not be seen too much. It served me well to kind of dull my shine or take a knee in my life, if you will. And so in 2016, 2017 is when I really started to have the inspiration, like the desire to be coaching. And it took me a few years to really understand how my unique experience, right, and how my unique gifts really could translate into help people. And so that's come a long way. And I really, anytime someone makes a change like that, anytime somebody, quote, puts themselves out there, which, whatever, I don't even know what that means, but a lot of people are afraid to put themselves out here. A lot of people are putting themselves out there. In my case, I was afraid to put myself out there, beyond writing. I wrote with pen names. So I've written, probably around 1,000 articles at Waking Times, but the majority of them are under pen names. And there's a whole host of pseudonymous names that I used to write with. I don't do that anymore, but because I hit a point in my life where I realized like the effects of playing small can be very, very deteriorative to your spirit, right? They can be very destructive to your spirit. They can have very real consequences in your personal relationships, especially in a marriage like mine, where we've been together for so long, and my wife has always known what I'm capable of, right? And she's been waiting for years and years and years to see me move into that, to live up to that, to become the man that she knows I can be. And that's really what self-sabotage is all about. It's all about being the person that you and the people in your life that know you the best and love you the most know you can be. So it's difficult for a lot of people in this environment, in this world, to really allow themselves the freedom to express themselves. So all of that is tied up in how the subconscious mind works. All of that is tied up in the things that people do in order to feel safe, in order to not be rejected, to not be judged, to not be criticized, ostracized, kicked out, and rejected by the tribe that they're in. And so, again, as I said at the very beginning of this conversation, for the people that have the courage and the willingness to step out, it's a very profound moment in their lives. There's a lot of opportunity to open to them. So I've been coaching for the last year and a half or so, and I just absolutely love it. And so at this point, I really understand that there are some very common things that people are going through right now. A lot of people that I coach, my typical client is, I do work with some, my typical client is a woman from the age of 42 to 65 or so. And so a lot of these people, most of these women, I would say all of these women, what they have in common is they're all very free spirited. They're all very self-determined, self-reliant. They're all very confident in their ability to choose for themselves, right? So nobody that I work with has participated in the new medicines that are available to everybody, including toddlers now, So they haven't participated in that stuff. And so a lot of them are suffering from this sense of rejection from the world, right? The world has chosen a path that they're not willing to take, right? And so this creates situations in their life where it's difficult for them to see, like I said before, to see how they can step through this and reconnect to their power. And so, what do I mean by reconnect to your power? It means for somebody who's living in power, it's different than living in force, right? Their life isn't about force. They're not trying to create outcomes or make things happen. They're not in conflict with people or others. They're not people pleasing. They're not doing more for others than they do for themselves, right? They're not codependent. They're not living in trauma bonds with other people, right? They stand on their own. Power stands alone, right? They confidently and easily make decisions for themselves. And they have the faith and confidence and the belief in themselves to know that the decisions will take them further down the road in pursuit of their best self. So that's typically the kind of person who I work with. And so a lot of the people that I serve as a coach are wanting to overcome self-sabotage. And that's always a great place to start. But something that I see, Judith, is that there's always a lot more going on. There's a lot more going on. So I really like to spend time with clients and work with them on a 3-month basis, at least, because then you get to discover things. Because a lot of times people will come to me and they want to address a particular area of self-sabotage. A lot of times that's about procrastination or avoidance of some responsibility in life. And so they think that the procrastination is preventing them from, living into a better career, finding a better path for themselves. And when we really get to know each other above and beyond the self-sabotage coaching, what we typically find out is there's other things going on in their life. There's a misallocation of their personal energy somewhere. Usually what it is they're spending too much time and too much energy on relationships that don't serve them well. So there's a need in that in situations like that to establish boundaries in your life. There's a need to there's a need to awaken the warrior energy of your own life so that the warrior in you can establish boundaries for your life and can enforce those boundaries. So whether it's an ex-husband, a boss or a CEO or someone who treats you poorly. So these are very common things. A lot of times it has to do with someone's relationship. And so what we find is that when the relationships in people's lives are out of order, when they're not harmonious, when they're not reciprocal, right? When they're not getting what they need and deserve out of the relationship, then that also makes it easier for them to engage in self-sabotaging behavior. I mean, one of the things, Judith, that so many of my clients do as a form of self-medication, because a lot of them are very healthy, very awakened people, but so as a form of escape and a form of self-medication, they spend a lot of time consuming more and more and more details about the dark news that's going on in our world, more than what's useful to them, more than what's helpful to them, more than what helps them get to where they want to go in life. And so I've heard it called doom scrolling, like that's it's kind of a fun term. But a lot of people are using that as a form of escape right now. So if you look at Waking Times, all of the conspiracies that are happening right now, we've talked about. And so what I've really learned, I've really tempered that sense of obligation to the truth, that sense of an obligation to help change and improve the world. I really started to understand that in itself, that over obligation to the world is just another sign of disempowerment. It's a sign that you're over obligated to something other than yourself. And so even in the Bwiti spiritual tradition with the plant medicine and boga, it's very important. One of the very important aspects of the philosophy of that is to serve yourself first, to get over this idea that it is somehow selfish to put yourself first. It is somehow selfish to value yourself to value your own life above others and above other things. And that's one of the bars in the cage of the matrix, I think, right? So they have us doing things out of a sense of obligation for others, at a sense of obligation to the economy, sense of obligation to whatever. And so we allow our own spiritual, mental, and physical lives to deteriorate in that process. And so it doesn't serve you well to try to solve the problems of the world. It's very important that you know what's going on so that you can make decisions that are best for you.
Yeah.
So a lot of people that I know have already made the decision where they stand in terms of the pandemic, where they stand in terms of masks, where they stand in terms of the, putting the injection under your skin, right? They already know where they stand. So an empowered approach, a way of living in these circumstances, when you're in contradiction to the mainstream, when you're outside of the herd, right? When the herd has left you long gone behind, an empowering way to approach this is to say, okay, I have limited and finite energy in my life. I have limited attention in my life. I have limited focus in my life. All right. The best revenge is living well. I know what I need to do. I've already made the decision for myself. I've already made a decision that aligns with my intuition and my moral convictions and my core values. And so I don't need to spend any more time knowing the details about this. It's not my role to convince anybody else. The people who are ready to be convinced will ask me. I will share them with them what I know and point them in the direction of more resources should they need them. But we're at a time when the awakening is accelerated, and a lot of people are being, there's a fence being drawn in between so many of us, and so a lot of people are on one side or the other of the fence. And I meet so many people these days that are just like, yeah, I woke up in 2019, I woke up in 2018, I woke up in 2020 to things that I've been studying, that many of us in the independent media have been studying for decades and decades. So that's one of the things that I really emphasize and really work with on my clients is, where's your energy going, right? Where is it going, and how can it be better applied to your life? How can you get a better outcome in your life by really reflecting on where your energy is spent, understanding how much energy you have, cultivating more of that energy, and more importantly, applying it to the things that really are going to bring you joy, peace, and abundance. So yeah, I'll give you a chance to say something. I enjoy these conversations, and it's, I have my own podcast, and so people tend to host these and communicate in different ways. So I appreciate you just letting me go on and on and on, but you're free to jump in.
When I started this channel, I'm somebody, I do not have a plan. Yeah, I just jump into something that I feel I have to do now. And then while I go, I figure it out.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a very off the cuff approach. And that's really how I prefer to run my podcast as well. I think that's it allows for more authenticity and just genuine expression of a personality to come through. But
so I didn't know. And I think that it is true what you say. One of the nicest self-made prisons that we have around us is the notion what other people think about us. Yeah. And when you do something like this, you do a podcast, you have the website, you're more public now. Yeah, okay, so you're sticking your neck out. And from the very beginning, forget about it. Not everybody will like your stuff. Not everybody is okay with your style. Don't even try. Don't even try to be everybody's darling. You do your thing, yeah, and you will be okay. And it doesn't matter how many people say.
Yeah, that's the number one thing that holds people back from doing, doing the things that they want to do. I mean, Joseph Campbell, he was asked and by Bill Moyers, what's the essence, the purpose of life, or what's the best advice you have to give. And he said, follow your bliss, follow your bliss. And it sounds so easy, Judith, when you put 3 words and put a period after it, follow your bliss. It's not that easy. It's not that easy for people. I mean, really, in the world that we live in, and it's surely things are exacerbated by social media and the amount of criticism that one can field, but invariably, like what I find, and when I help people to experience breakthroughs in their life, to where they're breaking through that fear. This is something I talk about when I talk in more depth about plant medicines. Fear is the first thing that goes. It's the first thing that goes, and it's the first thing that has to go.
Yeah.
In order to experience the treasure in those experiences, you have to be beyond the fear. And it's the same thing with life. It's the exact same thing with life. Getting beyond the fear is a different process for everybody. I know what I had to do. I know what it took me to get beyond the fear. I was just talking to my mom just a couple hours ago. She came in to visit us, and I was telling her I had a podcast coming up that I was going to be on. And the first podcast that I was ever a guest on, Judith, was in 2017. And I just reflected on that. And I was like, oh my God, I was absolutely terrified. Man, what are they going to think of me? What are they going to judge me? And so the fear is the thing that holds people back. And so I think that's a really important connection to make, because people can feel the fear vibration coming out of mainstream media, coming out of corporate propaganda, coming out of government announcements. They can feel this vibration, this density of fear, right? It's there. It's very, very present in our lives these days. And so now, not only is it the fear of stepping out and being yourself, right, and the fear of allowing yourself to be yourself, and face the possibility of judgment or criticism from people, which you're absolutely going to get, right? You're going to get that, right?
Yeah. So what?
But what?
I find it interesting, and that is my personal. I'm just speaking about my personal experience, but your harshest critics, you can bet your head on it, 99% of the time, they do not have anything on their channel. They do not have any work, but they know everything better. And they know even better than your guest. And they write you long letters in the comment section. And then, and I always do it. Click, okay, I want to see your work. Oh, you don't have one. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an environment right now where you see all of the flaws and shortcomings with human psychology on display for everyone to see.
Yeah.
There's definitely some ways in which the human mind is engineered that contribute to some of the drama and some of the problems that we have in the world. I just had a conversation with an old friend of mine this morning about the Solomon Asch experiments of the 1960s and 50s, right? And so Solomon Asch was I believe was a psychologist or something in a related field like that, but he did an experiment where he had one subject and then in a room full of people who were involved in the experiment. And in short, like basically he was asked to come into a room and look at a piece of data and pick out which was a fact, what truth was. So with his own eyes, he could see that the truthful answer was A. And before they call on him to give his answer, they give everybody else in the room the opportunity to answer the question. They all say B. So when it comes down to the individual who's all of a sudden a part of a group of anonymous people that he doesn't know, and all of them are saying what obviously to the eye, right, is a fabrication of the truth. It's not true. What happens? That person speaks a lie. And these are very fundamental, important aspects. I read a great article today. I forgot I'd love to be able to send props to this man for writing this. but it was on Substack. But he referenced the Ash experiments in a way that basically expressed it like this: it's hats off, kudos to all of those who stood with their convictions through, around the mandates regarding this new situation and the medicines involved. Kudos to them, because these are people that withstood the most sophisticated attempts at mind control, the most sophisticated operation of public manipulation and social engineering ever in the history of humankind, ever in the